Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Karen Trivett, and I'm an archivist. And this is another episode of An Archivist Tale, a podcast created by my husband, Jeff Huth, and me. Hi,
Hello, Karen.
Jeff.
Welcome to Pandemic Isolation Day 32 for me.
Oh, yes, yes. Ladies and gentlemen, it is April 16th, 2020, a Thursday, and it is 4:16 in the afternoon Eastern Daylight Time. And we welcome you to another episode. It is during the pandemic, and we have now segued from a purely audio format to a video and audio format. So, welcome to what is it, our third?
Yes.
Yes, our third video history and tale of an archivist and archivist adjacent professional. So, with that, I'd like our guest, who is very welcome, to introduce herself.
Well, hello everyone, and hi Jeff and Karen. I'm so delighted to be here and to be part of your podcast tale. I'm Dr. Pat Franks. I teach at San Jose State University within the School of Information, and I am the program coordinator for the Master of Archives and Records Administration.
Excellent. Thank you so much for joining us today, Pat. So we'll jump right in. Tell us, if you will, what is your archivist or archivist adjacent origin story?
I love the archivist adjacent
Yeah.
story because that's mine. uh, I've never, I'm trying to think back to career planning, and it was never my intent to be an archivist, a records manager, or an information governance professional. I was always interested in business. That's my passion, and education as well.
Mhm.
And so, when I was in high school, I worked as an accounts receivable, accounts payable clerk. I always thought I'd be an accountant. And then when I was in college, I enjoyed that, but I also got other interests as far as economics and public policy. And so that led me to my master's, where I looked at social science and public administration. And that followed by my PhD, which is in organization and management,
Oh,
and
Mhm.
that actually has an e-business emphasis. It was completely online back in the 1990s. I thought that was the way to go, and so I looked for a program that would allow me to follow that passion. But at the same time, in the 1990s, in New York State, where I was teaching at Broome Community College,
mm-hmm.
there was an announcement that the state needed records clerks, and that there were grants available for those of us who wanted to implement certificate programs and degree programs in records and information management. And a colleague and I wrote 3 successful grants for that, and we did implement those programs at BCC. It was then, while I was teaching those students, that I found that there was more to the records management piece than just the active records, that we would need to be able to preserve a lot of them, and that we weren't just preserving them for tax purposes, for example. We were actually looking at saving these wonderful works so that others can use them in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And we were fortunate enough in our grant application to be the first and maybe the only university at the time to receive funding for scanners so that we could teach our students how to digitize.
Wow.
And one of the first projects we completed was Kim by Kipling, and it's on Project Gutenberg. So at that time, I started getting so interested in all of the other aspects of information and how they could be of value to everyone besides the business owner. And as I was working at BCC and implementing this program, I thought, well, if I'm going to have a program in records management, should be a certified records manager, shouldn't I? You can't tell your students to do something if you can't do it. Uh, and so I became a certified records manager. About the same time, I finished my dissertation and took early retirement. And people would ask, "What are you going to do now?" I said anything I wanted, and I did consulting for several years in records management down in New Jersey for local governments. And then I heard about this marvelous program that was going to be launched at San Jose State University, the Master of Archives and Records Administration program. And it was going to be done completely online. And since the mid-90s, I had explored opportunities to learn how to teach online. So I was quite comfortable in that environment and applied for and was accepted to lead the program. So it was quite exciting. But there again, I was challenged because now I was Masters of Archives and Records Administration program. I was in charge of this program that said archives too, you know. What could I do now? So, of course, I had to become a certified archivist because we have to show our students, that that's really important. That professional certification is different from your degree, and it's equally important, but in a different way. Of course, a little after that, the information governance professional, the emphasis on information governance happened, and I thought we need that in our program. And if we have it in our program, I really need to be an information governance professional. And so I did become certified as an IGP as well. So I guess my story is a convergence of a lot of different interests and different fields all coming together, saying that data, records, information is all of value in different ways to different people. And we really need to see that big picture in order to be able to understand that. So I'm very pleased. I think Jeff is very familiar with one of my books that I co-edited, the International Directory of National Archives. And that was probably the culmination of my movement toward the archives field when I took a look at all of the nations in the United Nations and how they were managing their archives and their records. And it was just a fascinating journey, and one that I'm still on because things are always evolving.
Don't forget though, Pat. Also Taiwan.
Oh yes, absolutely. And we do have that in there.
Sorry, I mean, but I pushed for that because that I just for my peace of mind, I thought it was important. But I understand how you did it there. So, by the way, that's not the only book of yours that I have. I have your big encyclopedia. I have.
Yes.
Or Karen does. I consider it hers.
Two encyclopedias that deal with archives. One is the Encyclopedia of Archival Science I co-edited with Dr. Luciana Durante from UBC, and we went on to co-edit a second one. It's the Encyclopedia of Archival Writers 1515 through 2015. That was quite an effort.
Wow.
Both of those works have contributors from all over the globe. So it was a truly international effort. And right now I am co-editing, actually I'm editing, not co-editing, another work. And this one is the Handbook of Archival Practice. We're taking a look at how practitioners take that theory and apply it in the workplace. We're not concerned with the academic perspective. We're concerned with the real world practical applications of archival theory and policies and how that is now being implemented. And again, we're going to have writers from many English-speaking countries. We try to limit it to English-speaking countries, but contributors right now from the UK and Canada and the US, of course.
Well, do you ever have a time when you're not working on a book?
Exactly.
Well, I should, but no.
Okay. That's great. Well, I'm glad you started your story the way you did because I wanted you to do that, but I did not specifically tell you. Because when you were at Broome Community College and and applying for that grant through the Local Government Records Management Improvement Fund run by the New York State Archives and Records Administration. The names are just not long enough. I worked in the grants unit at the very beginning of it, and then in the field. And yours was an important program to try to help make records management more a regular practice, especially in local government, and also to make it so that it had more credibility as also a field that you wanted to get into because it was a job, because it was a way to get paid, not just because of what it can do for people. And so that was really important because that was when the State Archives did quite a few big projects and tried to really change the calculus and how people really looked at records and records management and archives. And I was glad you were there for that, and so I'm glad you didn't forget.
Absolutely not. That was my introduction to this field, so it was very important. See, you had something to do with it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was involved in that program for a quarter of a century, so I had a lot to do with it for a long time. I actually wrote most of the rules for most of that time, so it was kind of strange. Since I was a little kid on, I was
You like to make rules for people to follow, don't you?
Yeah, but don't worry, we had lots of input from other people. There were certainly some rules that I never supported, but we did put in.
Well, Pat, I have a question. You mentioned the certification, the archive certification threshold and achievement, and how does that differ, do you think, in terms of its being a credential or set of credentials that differ from the educational component?
The In the educational component, we cover a lot of theory as well as practice. Our program is very practical, where we look at why things should be done a certain way. We try to instruct our students that that's how it should be done, and then they go into the world and they find out that it's not really done that way. You know, that might be the ideal, and this is how it really is. But
Right.
what they're learning there is a lot of theory. And they do have practice. They do have opportunities for internship. Many of them are working in the field. That's true. But what we're doing with our degree is really certifying that they're meeting the 10 core competencies around which our program was built. So it's very academically oriented. We're looking at writing skills, we're looking at communication skills, so many things all together. And I think the certification is different in that it actually now proves that you can do what you said you could do. All right, when they leave our program, they should be able to do so much. Uh, but and we can prove that they've learned what they need to within the classes, that they've succeeded in providing evidence. That's true. But yeah, the professional associations all have their own core competencies that they look for too. They're all looking for some certain knowledge and skills for the individuals that could say, I'm a professional archivist or I'm a professional records manager. And we want to be sure that our students are able to prove that as well, that the professional associations recognize their skills and abilities. So we really strongly encourage them to also add to their degree these professional certifications. I think it gives you credibility in the field. It's almost as if your master's is a certain level that you want to achieve. But beyond that, you want to prove that you are competent in these specific areas. And
Right.
I think it's valuable for our students to have both. And we're very fortunate in that we're working with the Institute of Certified Records Managers. And all of our students, when they graduate, get credit for the 5 parts of the 6-part exam that are the objective exams. So
Right.
they,
Not
yeah,
that,
they immediately could say, I want to become a certified records analyst, and they get that credential for it. And if they'd like to do the case studies, that's all they need to do. And then they can become a certified records manager as well. But as far as the archivist exam's a little different. It's 100 questions, isn't it? Something like that. And so we can't really say when our students graduate, just give us, that certified archivist credential. But what we can do is say that our students have taken all of the courses that they need in order to be qualified to sit for that exam. And that exam then will prove what we're saying we think we know. And so we have had all of our 10 required courses approved by the Academy of Certified Archivists as being pre-approved for that certification. So we're quite proud of that because our integrated approach of archives and records management at the same time is being looked at. Those courses include information on both areas in each course. And that's being looked at by 2 different certification bodies and being approved for their own credentials. So it's quite an accomplishment that we're very proud of.
Very good.
It's pretty good. And just for the audience's information, I sit on your little advisory committee. So I don't feel I was very productive last time.
Productive. Yeah. And you've been on it since I think I looked back 2011, I believe. So I would imagine over those years you've been very productive.
Yeah, it just wasn't the last one because if I start, it was just looking at how we define goals essentially. And I knew if I started talking, I would never stop. And so I said, I better just sit back. But I have been impressed by people on that group, especially our Canadian colleagues who are particularly practicing this field the way that I like to see it practiced, which is a very integrated way, very holistic, understanding everything instead of trying to be a specialist in one end or the other. And so I think that's a good thing, and it's a good thing for your students.
Oh, well. Yes, and one of the Canadian colleagues is an instructor in our program, Lisa Dalby, Dr. Lisa Dalby. The other, Robert McLaughlin, is a graduate of our very first MARA graduating class. So we have been watching him go through his career, progress through different stages and different employment opportunities since he's graduated from our program. And he, as he's learning about what's going on in different areas, he's been involved lately in information governance and knowledge management. He comes back and he feeds that back into our discussions, and we incorporate whatever we learn that we believe our students need into our program as quickly as we can.
Well, your 2 books have this international point of view and scope. Would you say your program does as well?
Yes, and we must. Our university requires that. So although we have always had, because of course, from my point of view, if I'm thinking about international business, I'm thinking about international, right? And so if you have an organization that does any business outside of the country, you're already thinking about their laws, their regulations, their customs, their culture. That's all very important. And then when we get into the archives field, we're a young country. When we want to look back at history and in the way humanity has evolved, we look to other countries as well, and even in the records field, in the library field, where did those institutions start? It wasn't in the United States, right? We came long after. And so within all of our programs too, we stress that our students must understand the international aspects of archives, records, and information. And we do have one of our 10 core competencies has to do with global aspects.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. How would you describe to listeners or viewers in this case, what are the other competencies?
Well, there is one of the competencies management, for example. And what we're hearing from people in industry is that students shouldn't just know the specifics of their field, archives, records, information governance, but they need to have a management perspective as well, so that they understand how to become a leader and how to work with their coworkers, how to become part of a team or even lead a team. So that's a very important competency. Another one has to do with the ethics and values of the professions. And how do we bring that to our workplace? There are specific ones that have to do, of course, with how have the systems evolved over time. Those seem to be the easy ones for the students to talk about, because you could look at the technology and how it has morphed, even while they're in the programs. But we have quite a few when we look at specific technology, active records, for example, preservation, for example, all of those things too. So we have we try to cover almost everything we think that our students would need to know and be able to do in order to be successful when they graduate.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful.
And so, how successful have they been?
Very. Of course. Very.
Okay.
We don't have statistics, unfortunately, you know, and that's always a downfall. It's very difficult to track students afterwards, but I am very fortunate in that students will keep in touch. They write, they send back notes, they let me know when they've got promotions or even when they have children, you know. And so we're hearing back, and actually our graduates, we have 100% satisfaction rate on the program when the students leave our program. That has been pretty consistent over the years, maybe 1 year, 98. But we've been very, very fortunate in that our students appreciate the program and the instructors, the quality of support, student support that they receive. And from what we're hearing from our students out in the field, they are doing quite well. Some of them are looking to further their degree. One is going back for her doctorate soon. And one of them on the program advisory committee, Jeff, CJ, Connie, she also is a member of that first graduating class, and CJ has been working from home and teaching others within her accounting firm how to work from home. And so they're bringing a lot into their workplace, and they're also feeling very good. She had mentioned to me before our meeting started the other day that she was so proud and so happy to have graduated from a program like ours, because she felt that she could be a leader and help other people, even through difficult times like this pandemic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it is a strange world we're in. And it gets stranger all the time.
Yes.
I don't know if you saw, but the governor of our state, joint state, today advanced the essentially shutdown order through May 15th.
Oh, well.
So that means that I'm not going back to the office before May 16th, but the thought is that it's going to last longer, and probably into June.
I heard that the governor's wife was exposed to COVID-19. Today, my husband had said, so it may be on the news. I didn't hear it myself, but that's what he told me. So I'm sure that it's hitting people in areas that have not been exposed previously. Most of our concern was in New York City, for example, because of the population, right? Everybody's so close together. But I'm in upstate New York, and slowly we're seeing a few more incidences, a few more cases. And several, unfortunately, deaths as well. So it is a very difficult time, I think, intellectually, to wrap your head around how we're all supposed to behave.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's been interesting. I mean, down here, most of the cases are in the southern part of the state. So I mean, the more south than the southern tier. And so from New York City. All of Long Island and Westchester and Rockland, that's most of it.
It is.
But we still have cases everywhere. We have
Yeah.
cases in every state, though it took Yates a long time to get.
I heard from
I
one of
kept
my
wa-
students. Yes, I heard from one of my students in Georgia today that her employer was tested positive, and that she's very concerned. She's concerned about her cough right now, and she's attempting to get approval for a test herself.
Yeah, well, good luck because we don't have enough tests.
That's
the one,
yes, that's the concern
one
she
of
has.
the big problems that we have.
Yeah.
So how does a records manager solve this problem?
Well, all I can tell you is that records and information managers who go through our programs are very well prepared to work from home, work remotely, work in virtual teams. We did not even see a slowdown in our program. If there's anything, it would be a note from one student, a young man that is in my program. Had an announcement that everybody had to work from home. The only concern he had was he was the only one who was really good at it, and so he was being bombarded with work that had to get done until everybody else came up to speed. So he asked for a 2-day extension on an assignment. That was the biggest problem that we've had so far, and I think that's just because this is our normal way of operating.
What would you say is what comes to the forefront of your mind as one of the biggest challenges in running such an operation as you do?
Oh, you mean the program itself?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Well, the feedback that we get from external groups like the Program Advisory Committee, but also others, feeds into our program. So we're constantly having to keep up to date. But we can do that. That's not the thing that really makes our program successful. What does is all of the support that we have that you don't see. You see me. And you see our students, but behind the scenes, we have fantastic administrators. We have a wonderful staff. We have the best IT support that you could imagine. And we even have someone in charge of educating the educators. And if you want to be an adjunct, for example, in our program, you've got to pass the same type of introductory technology course as our students do. And if you don't teach. And unfortunately, I had 2 people that I thought would teach for us that could not handle that. And we're quite adamant that whatever we offer is going to be top notch. And that's easy to say to an instructor, but more difficult to help them do. Our school does that, though. They provide us absolutely everything we need in order to be successful.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Now here's a touchy question because I like talking about touchy questions. There is, especially in the archives field, this idea that we have a plethora of educational opportunities, programs, teaching, archives, records management, and such, and that we have too many of them, and that we're shooting too many out into the world. I'm sure you've heard that. And so my question is, from your point of view, if somebody had told you that, because you run one of these programs, what would your response be in that case?
Well, there are different programs and they have different, I think, goals in mind, and they're not suitable for everyone. I just heard from one of my students who said she had looked at 2 programs, and I won't name the other school, but it's an excellent school, ranked much higher than we are, U.S. News World Report, if you take a look at the rankings for programs. And it is an archival specific program, which is what she wanted. And she decided that that was not going to be exactly right for her, but you know why? The price. So there we go, okay? So she came to us because we're cheaper. Our goal is to be medium as far as price. We try to position ourselves in the middle. That's a marketing strategy. But now she was writing her final e-portfolio, and that's when she mentioned it. I never knew that. And she said, I am so glad I made this choice. And I thought, I am so glad you did too. So it's really very difficult to imagine that we would have one-size-fit-all program. that different programs will meet different needs for different people. Some like to be on campus. They want labs. They want instructors that will be there to help them. Some want to focus only on archives, others on archives and history, for example. Some of us want to take a look at archives records and now information governance. We're getting into information assurance, cybersecurity, very different focus. So I would say go for it. Not everybody has to enroll in your program, and if they don't, then you discontinue the program. I think it's like any other business, but there's my business mentality coming through, right? You have the opportunity to present a program. And if it's successful, then that's wonderful. And if it's not, then you rethink. Not every millionaire, right, was successful with their first program. So it doesn't mean that there's a problem there. It just means that perhaps it didn't fit the target audience you were thinking about. But I would say I don't know that there are too many. I think that the more the better. We can all talk about it. We can all think about it. We can all look at what we think is really important to offer. And we do it in different ways. I'm part of a panel from MER. They're moving their conference from Chicago on site to virtual in the beginning of May. And there are
managing electronic records, by the way.
And there are three of us. Yes, electronic records management. And there are three programs that are going to be part of this panel. And you would think we're competitors, right? But we're not. We're really working together to try to iron out, what could make our own programs better? And part of the panel will be thought leaders in industry helping us grasp what they think they're looking for in employees. So I really enjoy working with colleagues that have programs similar to ours. And it's not just in the U.S. One of the programs that I think is just fantastic is at the University of Dundee. And so we have to look internationally, too, when we're thinking about training and education for our students.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's close to the argument I would have made for you. One of the things is you are actually doing things differently than any other one that I can think of, any other program that I can think of that I know enough to think of. So that's one issue. Part of the concern that people have is that they don't find jobs, however. And so I do hear, especially from archivists, that they don't find jobs sometimes. And it's hard for me to solve that problem. I can tell people when I have a job available, which isn't too often.
Yeah.
But often, even though archives is one focus, it's not going to necessarily be the major part of people's work. And so maybe they don't even want that job.
Well, it depends on what their view of archivist is and what they want to do with their degree. I would beg to differ. When I did have someone, not in our program, but in another program, who wanted a position as an archivist, and she was concerned that she could not get a position. Well, I could see many reasons for it. First off, her attitude, her CV. I mean, those are simple things. Her resume, but also her expectations. What did she expect? What did she think she was going to do? Be hired and said, "Here you are now the queen of your domain," and you could sit there with these wonderful artifacts and do what you want? That's not the case. You've got to be a player in the organization that hires you, and you have to understand the reason for the whole organization and then how you fit in there. And very difficult to explain to people, but you have to add value. What are you bringing to the organization that helps them reach their goals? So you have to know that. So what are their goals, the institution's, not yours, what you want to do? And then how then can you say, boy, I'm the person you need, and I'm going to help you move toward your own goals for your organization because of what I'm bringing to the table. So I would like to think that sometimes somebody who's saying I can't find a job is looking for an ideal job that they have in mind. And if you take a look now at jobs that are out there, you may have a title you're looking for, and the description is nothing like that. You have to start now looking at descriptions. What did they want me to do? What would I be working with? I don't care what you call me, so don't call me an archivist. Call me something else, but just let me do what I've been trained to do and what will help you move your organization forward. So I don't know. That's my view. I keep telling our students, keep your options open. We're teaching you how to succeed in archives, records, information governance, information management. There's so many fields, and they're all converging, and you're going to have a way to bring your perspective, the archival perspective, into other positions. And we have many that are looking now for digital archivists as well, and I see an increase in needs for that. I do see a lot of archivist positions that are asking for records management skills. And many archivists don't want to, I think of themselves as a records manager. Maybe they don't want to deal with electronic records. But if you start looking at the descriptions that are available now, that's what they're asking many archivists to do.
So based on that response, Pat, I'm going to have to sue you for intellectual property theft because those are the points that I always make. And one thing that I have is I keep telling people, don't look for the perfect job.
No.
Because you don't know if you're ever going to find the perfect job. And imagine that your world can be bigger than you think it is. So originally, when I was a young man, I said, well, I just want to work in archives. I don't want to work in records management. Then, I got laid off because the state hadn't sent in enough money yet. And so I said, okay, you go find a job. So my job was a records management job. And archivists sometimes poo-poo records management. They say it's boring or something to me. To me, it's essential. It's very interesting. Keeps me going all the time. And it better teaches you that rule that you were talking about, and which I call is the mission of my organization is my mission. Because if it's not, then I'm in the wrong place. And so if you can't support the mission of your organization, you are in the wrong place. You've got to move on. And by the way, the wrong place could still be an archives. And so people have to think about those things and think about just changing their scope a little bit. The other thing I tell people is be prepared to move. If you can move, then that opens up a lot more jobs. If you don't want to live, let's just say leave Binghamton, New York, let's say, because you like this Susquehanna or something, then it's going to reduce your chances. And so you always have to think in those terms. Because you can make your life, but you're not going to make all of it.
Absolutely. And, sometimes you can get that job that's not the ideal job and turn it into your ideal job.
Exactly.
When you look at it, I love to put my own take on any position that I get into, and I think we all do, right? So we all take a look at what is expected, and then we say, but, we might tweak it this way. And usually we're tweaking it in a way that makes us happier and hopefully the employer as well. So, I agree with you, and especially about the mobility, too. You've got to be able to move. You can't really sit in one spot and say, I can't find a job because I'm out in the country, right? With nobody around for miles. Who would hire you? You've got to be able to go where the position is.
Right. But if we look at New York, since we know New York pretty well, there are lots of jobs in records. Every county has a job in records management. It's everywhere.
That's right.
So you can find them sometimes, but you just have to think about what's most important. And sometimes you have to change your whole life.
True enough. So Pat, tell us about the internship opportunities through your program. Are they required experience or is it elective?
Well, this is interesting because we're changing it for the fall, and so we had an internship program that's 3-credit course, and then also a 3-credit organizational consulting project. If you don't want to intern somewhere because you're working full-time for an employer who doesn't want you interning somewhere else, they may have a project that you can work on that would be outside of the scope of your own responsibilities. And if you do that and they would sign off as supervisor, you could get 3 credits for that opportunity. But what we're finding is that students were more and more asking for substitutions because they're seeing all of the skills and knowledge that they also need and saying the internship work experience is very good, but I'm working. What I'd really like to do is take another course. There's a fantastic course in cybersecurity, for example, that my students really enjoy. But there's another one that we don't offer in our program in manuscripts and archives that I try to make every one of our students take because it is so good. And so they're looking at all these opportunities and saying, first of all, I'd rather learn something else that I could add to my knowledge base. Or second, that my employer will not allow me to work in another organization and there is not a special project I need to do at work. So they've been asking for substitutes and we've been offering that for the last couple of years. I would listen to their stories and then, sign a waiver and we have to keep track of it. And then they have to change their whole program in order to certify that this is now acceptable. But this year, the requests outweighed the people who wanted to take the internship or organization project.
Oh.
And at this point, I asked for permission. We had to go all the way through the vice president in order to have approval to make that an elective. And to tell our students they now had 10 required courses that are all content courses and that they had 4 elective courses that they could choose from either the MLAS program or the MARA program. And so this fall will be the first time that we're offering it that way. We're still highly recommending an internship if they don't have the experience, but we're not requiring it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
That sounds great. So, Pat, do you ever run out of ideas?
I hope not. I'm enjoying what I do too much. There's always something new and different to look at, and then hopefully to bring back and share with the students.
What is on the horizon for the program and for you?
For the summer, I'm going to teach a course in blockchain. Distributed ledger technology for archives and records management, and I'm hoping that that one will run because that will be fun. That will allow me to explore further something I've been writing about, but with the input from students. I was speaking to one student who signed up for it today, and she said that she can't wait to get into there to see how that might apply to the documents she's managing at work, that she really wants to come up with ideas of her own. And I'm thinking, this is great to be able to get the students to now look at what you're saying and writing about, but bringing their own perspectives and their real world experiences into the classroom. So that's one. Another one is artificial intelligence. A group of us from several different schools put together a grant proposal for the NSF. I don't know now, with the COVID-19 and the movement of funding from something like artificial intelligence for our purposes to the need for more research in the health field. I don't know if that will be approved, but certainly artificial intelligence beyond just classification. We're looking at more than that. And then Jeff knows I play around in virtual worlds. And so I've had an avatar since 2007. However, this last year we've taken a year to reflect and see how we might take some of what we've learned in our virtual worlds and move it into virtual reality for education. And so we'll have a symposium on that in the fall. And we've all been visiting our virtual reality platforms with our little headsets and gloves so that we could experience what we think others are experiencing. It's very popular for students in the younger ages, and the lower grades, but we'd like to see how we might apply it to professional development, for example, to education on the graduate level.
Mm-hmm. Very good. So much going on.
That's always a good thing.
Yes, absolutely.
But I always like the conversations because I learn something that I'm supposed to know and I don't realize I know it. So, for instance, what you taught me today was, well, of forced my students, Jeff, are going to be great at working from home because they were studying from home. This is what they were. They know what the tools are. They're familiar with them. They're comfortable in it. They were able to graduate by doing it. So it's kind of an amazing thing. You just don't necessarily see things until somebody tells you to look around the corner.
Mm-hmm.
You can hear something. What do you think that means?
Well, Pat, tell us, if you will, tell the viewers what keeps you passionate. Obviously, you're a very passionate person about your work, but tell us more specifically what keeps you at this every day.
Well, because my work is my hobby. So,
Yes, yes,
yeah,
mine too.
that's
Agreed.
the simplest way I could put it. I love what I'm doing, therefore it's fun. If it were not fun, I
Yeah,
wouldn't be doing it. I love learning new
right.
things and sharing with others, collaborating with people who are interested in the same things that I am. And so it's
Mm-hmm.
just an energizing, I think, opportunity just to work with people, students, colleagues from all over the world right now. Uh, and
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't imagine doing anything else.
So I'm always interested in the way a life works
Yes.
and how you're always this you're such a lifelong learner.
Yeah.
So just take blockchain for instance. I vaguely know what it is. And I keep saying, Jeff, you really should look at it sometime. And I say, Jeff, you got too much to do. You just go do that. But you learn about it and then you teach it.
Yeah.
You find the records management applications and you make it real.
Mm-hmm.
And so for people like me who really want to know more about blockchain, but you know haven't sat down to really think about it much, tell us what, at least simply, is the solution that you use when you're in records management in a records management
Well, you
application.
know what? I'm not convinced that we need all of our documents to be encrypted and stored in a blockchain, right? We've got a lot of problems with
I
that
hope not.
concept right now. Things like the right to be forgotten, for example. If you have something that's immutable, which blockchain is supposed to be, although it is not, but that's one of their goals. Um, that means you don't change anything. But what do you do then when you're presented with a request, which is a valid request to remove that information? So, what I see blockchain in the records management field right now is a register, a better way to be able to uh, indicate that these things have happened, right? And that we can prove, and maybe that's part of what it is, it's evidence that something we've done, a record, has not been altered over time. That's something we try to do in our preservation systems, but that's something that
Right.
blockchain can do for us as well. The National Archives of the UK has been working on that, where they're looking at the images that they have and saying, in 100 years, how do people know that this is really the image that we put into archive 100 years prior? Well, they're looking at the solution of blockchain in order to encrypt that, in order to say that nothing has been changed. If it's been changed, we'll know about it. Now, there are a lot of issues with that. For example, migration technology, right? You're going to have to migrate your objects over time in order to work with different technology, different formats. Those are all things that have to be addressed. So for right now, we're seeing it that it's easy to use for simple things like land registries, something, our mortgage, right? I want to make sure that my mortgage, I'm not listening to these people on TV who are telling me somebody's taking my mortgage and now they own my house. You hear that? So what you can do is encrypt that and put that process on a blockchain so that it can't be changed later on. The reason, well, I don't want to get into all of the technology for it, but those are the goals. It's to provide evidence that something that you've had, like a record, is not changed over time.
Right. Which gets into, I suppose, the possibility for real diplomatics, because one of the things is I have many old records. So, and in the United States, if they go back to the 1600s, we consider that quite old. and you'll see certain documents. They'll have seals and certain wrappings and all sorts of things that are added to the record in order to prove their authenticity, whereas literally they have no effect whatsoever. I mean, none. Meaning they would be easy to falsify in almost every case. You might be able to say that, well, obviously the package hasn't been opened before, except that after you open it, you don't know anymore. And the other thing is somebody could have opened it, replaced the wrapping somehow. So there are all these different ways in which those systems of diplomatics always fell through, that there was no way to really assert with absolute certainty that something was what it legitimately said it was. And so, I've come to the conclusion a long time ago that the only way to get close to that will really be a technological solution that has lots of protections and lots of humans looking at it so that they can make sure changes don't occur.
That's true. And ISO, International Organization for Standardization, I think they're looking at something like 15 standards now for blockchain. So they're trying to standardize the approach, although because it's so new, there are so many different solutions by so many different vendors that won't happen realistically for quite some time. At the same time, there are other organizations looking at how do you make sure that storage is secure. When we talk about our digital preservation systems that we currently use, the items that are stored in there, even if they follow the model and everything is supposed to be secure, they're still using some other storage, like Amazon's storage. For the actual documents. How can we ensure that at that basic storage level, not just the application level, that everything is as it should be, that it's safe and secure? So we have a lot to think about in that area, and I don't see a solution coming up soon. But I think you're right. It's the technology that is causing the problem, and we're looking to the technology to help us solve it as well.
Yes.
It's usually where you go.
Yeah.
The coronavirus is what causes that problem. To solve it, we've got to understand it.
Yeah.
So you got to go back to it. It always happens like that, and it is the weirdest thing. But I still like that because it's interesting, and that's what you get to in the information business that we're in. Information's always eventually about knowledge, even though sometimes people forget about it. And it's always about trying to, save what you need in order to do something in the future. Future might only last 3 weeks for some needs, not for the world, but for some needs. And it might be, indefinitely for others. But that's what it is. And for humans to operate, we need it. That's why I think the work that we do is so important, because we're trying to figure out how to protect the information people are going to need to do all sorts.
That's right.
Pat, you were astounding. You were inspiring, at least to me.
And to me.
And I've accomplished my mission.
Yes.
So I really appreciate it. I appreciate what you said, but it's your point of view, your practicality, and also that passion that you only talked about briefly, but that's really real through the entire time you talk, all the time. And I do not know how you do what you do, because it seems too hard to me. So congratulations. And thank goodness we got forced into doing things remotely, recording remotely, because there were all these people we just couldn't get on on our agenda, with places we're traveling or where we were going to be, and other things we had to do when we were there. So I finally got you to tell the story about those local government records management programs in community colleges in New York State. one of my favorite state archives projects ever.
Well,
So
and it was the one that started all of this for me, so I'm very grateful for that myself.
Yeah, see what it means? This is what I always say about the world. You don't know where you're going. So, so find out.
Yeah.
And just stick around and find out. I was thinking this the other day when I said, who thought I would be working from home for a month?
World.
Who thought we were going to shut down the world for a few months?
Exactly.
Who knew? But that makes the world interesting.
And actually larger than you would imagine. This way we reach out to so many more people that we could not have otherwise.
Absolutely.
Right. I'm so glad to have this opportunity. Because I'm not going really stir crazy. I'm busy all the time. We have stuff to do. Karen's good to look at. So everything's fine. I mean, I occasionally see other people, but not often. And so, except when I see them virtually like this. And so it's an interesting world. But thanks for making it more interesting.
Oh, thank you for having me. I've enjoyed this very much.
No problem. And now our outro, ladies and gentlemen. This obviously, you knew it all along, brings us to the end of another episode of An Archivist's Tale. So I hope you like this one. And we're going to have other ones. Mm-hmm. Maybe one next week. You can't really tell. Because we're stuck in this department way up in the air where when we look down, people look like ants. And we don't ever know if we're going to see the real world again. With that, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for listening. And bye-bye.